Hello, welcome to today's webinar, Discover the 8 Habits of Highly Successful Career Colleges. Before we get started, I wanted to review a few housekeeping items. Throughout the presentation, we encourage you to type questions or comments at any time using the chat panel in the bottom right corner of the GoToWebinar player. We'll leave about 15 minutes at the end for Q&A, so if you have any questions, make sure to type them in the chat box, and we'll try to get to as many of you as possible. Additionally, if you'd like to join the conversation on Twitter, the hashtag is #8habits, as you see on the screen here. The Twitter handle for today's guest is also listed. We'd love to have you connect with us and keep the conversation going beyond today's event. We'll also ask you to take a short survey at the end of the webinar. Your feedback is very important to us, so please take a moment to answer the questions in the survey. My name is Lauren Scungio, and I'm a marketing specialist at Penn Foster. I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. Here at Penn Foster, we offer an enrollment solution that creates a bridge for potential students lacking a high school diploma who would like to continue on to post-secondary education. Our high school completion program helps higher ed schools deliver qualified enrollments at an affordable price. Joining me today is our esteemed presenter, Mr. Ray McNulty. Ray brings over 40 years of experience as an educator, administrator, and education reform expert. Currently, Ray is Dean of Southern New Hampshire University's School of Education. Additionally, Ray serves as a senior fellow and past president of the International Center for Leadership in Education. Prior to these roles, he was a senior fellow at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and chief learning officer at Penn Foster College. Mr. McNulty began his career as a classroom teacher, vice principal, and principal in the state of Massachusetts before becoming superintendent of Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union in Brattleboro, Vermont. From 2001 to 2003, he served as Vermont's Education Commissioner, where he worked to align the Department of Education with the key issues of early education, educator quality, and secondary school reform. Now, without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Ray McNulty, who will jump into the content of today's webinar.
Thanks, Lauren, and it's a pleasure to be here today and actually to be delivering this webinar from the Penn Foster offices in Boston, where it's a beautiful sunny day, and not sure where everybody out there is sitting, but boy, I can tell you one thing, it's a gorgeous day today. And to focus on the idea of successful career colleges, I'd like to start by sharing one of my favorite cartoons. This cartoon represents a lot to me. I share it often when I talk. And the kind of message behind this cartoon to all of us out there is that in today's world, if we wait even just a short time to make program changes, to get our hands on good data, to not jump on some emerging trends that we see, it's going to be too late. It's going to be too late for us. And the minds here at Penn Foster and many others that I work with have worked hard to put together this webinar to share some of what we know really helps schools, particularly career colleges, be successful. So before I jump into that, I just want to say there's two things that every school should be doing at the same time. And you can picture two circles intersecting in a Venn diagram. The first circle is all of us need to be focused on improving what we currently do. And we need to be doing that every day. The second circle is we need to be creating the future trends and future programs for our systems. And those two circles, that's what we really should be focused on. And so that leads me to begin to point to where I want to take this conversation today with you. And that is when we talk about success in a career college, what we're really talking about is positive student outcomes. What is it that we want? And what we really want is we want our students, quite frankly, to get jobs. That's, as you can see there. The pathway to get jobs is to really focus on credible recruitment and then diligent retention leads to quite frankly great job placement. So when you think about those three pieces, and I'm going to be talking about those three and build them around 8 habits, I want you to think of this puzzle. I know many of you probably have played with puzzles every now and then, but you see that black piece. Everyone that I know, and when I travel around the country and actually in Europe as well, people are saying, what's the one thing we should be doing? And it's kind of like this puzzle. It's kind of like people are saying, we do all these things, but there's a, we want to know what should we be doing. And a lot of them say, we want the answer, and the answer is really that one black puzzle piece. But the fact of the matter is that black puzzle piece wouldn't be the last piece to make the puzzle if you didn't do all the other things. And that's really what today's conversation is about. I talked very briefly about the idea of recruitment, retention, and job placement. And there are 8 habits that we've been focused on at Penn Foster and with other successful career colleges to drive this work. So let me just briefly mention the 8 habits, and then I'll go into detail for each of the 8 habits. So the first is, they develop strong relationships with the local community. Being a strong local partner, absolutely critical. The second is they understand student anxiety about enrolling in college, and they know how that anxiety impacts so many other levels of student performance. Third, they find new pools of prospective students, and I'll talk a bit about that today with you, mainly because all of us that are in this business know that there's a declining number of students leaving America's high schools heading into college or technical training. Fourth, they find ways to ease the financial burden of the students. You'd have to be like living under a rock not to understand the fact that cost is a significant driver in this work. And students are not always looking for the least expensive, but they're looking for the best value. And that's how we have to think about some of this. They also, successful career colleges develop extensive support networks for their students. And particularly when we have to begin to recruit students that come from incredibly varying backgrounds, we have to have multiple levels of support. I'll share some of the ideas that we've gained over the years at both Penn Foster and other universities shortly. Next is they emphasize the importance of data. And when we talk about data, we just don't always talk about quantitative data, we talk about qualitative data. You must really focus on the value and importance of both of those pieces of data. And quite frankly, sometimes I hear people say things, they say hard data and soft data. And quite frankly, I don't think any data is soft anymore. I think all data is essential. So it's hard data is as essential as soft data. I don't think there's a business I go to, hotel I don't stay at, or a restaurant I don't go to, that they ask for your opinion. So I'm going to talk a bit about that, weave that into the conversation today. Next, 7th of these habits that I'll talk about is the idea that really successful career colleges create student evangelists. I mean, these are the people that become the drivers and your voice out there in the field. And lastly, the most successful, and this is the tough one at times, they're incredibly diligent about understanding the complexities of the regulatory environment so that they don't place their institution in jeopardy. So let me now start and get into each of these. If you have questions, please go ahead and send the questions in. Lauren's being great at watching all of that, and she'll take care of making sure we get to answer any of your questions. And I'm going to go through these rather quickly and hope to finish in about 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes, and get us to the point where we can share some of the conversations, answers to some of the questions you might have. So let's start with this first one. They develop strong relationships with the local community. I mean, this habit is absolutely incredible, and this habit's incredible not just because it's about community engagement and PR, but it actually builds your brand and makes it an incredibly strong part. So you can see that this impacts recruitment as well as job placement when you become a strong community partner. And the other thing that the strong community partnership does is it creates what I call bounce. People start hearing your name, start getting engaged with what's going on, and there's incredible success there. Another part of this is, as you see on the screen, it's working with local employers is absolutely vital. And it's vital because, first of all, they're closer to the market and they can give you valuable intelligence. So these habits These two habits, these two important habits, when we look below at the tactics, let me talk a bit about tactics around this particular habit that we find to be incredibly important. Many times, and I know there are many schools out there that do conduct community-wide fairs, career fairs. One of the things we need to do is really open our community fairs and our community employment fairs up to not just our students, but to lots of students, to all the students, and share our knowledge with as many different groups and organizations as we can. Now, when we do these, we lean on getting employers to show up, particularly career community fairs. We want the employers there. We have to make it incredibly easy for employers to take part in this work. So we have to really be clear with our students about having resumes ready. Don't put a burden on the employer that has to be at the community fair. That's absolutely critical. Second tactic is to foster strong relationships with the local employers. And by doing that, there are many things. I know that all of you out there can start to rattle off the things you do with your local employers. Obviously, establishing internships is really, really important. And also getting students to visit these particular places, getting students to visit the employers, and also to discount and provide training for businesses that are in the area at heavily discounted rates, to see it as one hand washes the other. We're not just in it to give them interns, but we're in it also to support those employers and the value that they bring to the community. I know that I've been to many career schools where they list their employers that value the work that goes on. So having a list of employers that hire your graduates, that intern with your graduates, that provide advice and advisory services to your university or to your college is absolutely critical, and a great way to grow your business and a great way to become incredibly strong. You can see the other 2 points that we make there is advisory boards. One thing I want to say about advisory boards is that it's really important to make sure that the advisory board members are treated incredibly well. They're seen as critical and very valuable to your institution, and putting pictures up of the advisory board members when you can on your websites and in boardrooms to honor them is another amazing and very helpful, critical thing to do. Penn Foster's really taken the lead in doing some of this work. They're really good at it. I'd also suggest to work with local high schools and youth organizations. So many of our youth these days are connected to organizations in the community, whether they're Job Corps, whether they're youth service agencies, whether they're boys clubs, girls clubs. Making that connection and making it early, seeing the university, seeing the college as connected to all these organizations helps build the brand and continue to improve your institution. So the second point, second of these levers, kind of these, I like to think of them as puzzle pieces. So the second puzzle piece, you can all stare at it and figure out where does it fit, right? It's about understanding the anxiety around enrolling in college for many of these students. This is, something that I think all of us in higher ed understand pretty well, but what are we doing for it? So why is this habit really important? Well, a lot of our students, they're fearful about financial considerations. They're fearful about, am I actually going to get a job if I invest in this? Do I have the time? How much time is it going to take for me? And, does the career college environment, is it the right place for me? And obviously, many of you lean on things like the tactics that we have there, a class pass, which is always an important thing to do, having a student spend a day visiting the university, visiting the college, spending time there. Those are all important, but what we also find is a one-on-one advising prior to enrollment, or one point of contact, is critical. They're nervous enough about enrolling. If every time they call and they have to repeat their story to another enrollment officer, So it's really important to guide them to one person, one enrollment connection is incredibly important. And last is understanding the prospect's existing support network. I've added this one particularly, and I hold this one as pretty important. When you're interviewing students and you're doing intake on students, ask them, who supports them? Who are the people that provide support when they're in difficulty, or when they want to celebrate something? Who do they share it with? Who is their local support network that they wrap around them? And you'll see, I'll talk about this again in a couple of minutes, but I think it's an incredibly important part of recruitment. You're showing the student that you're not just interested in them as a consumer, but you're interested in who they connect with and who they are surrounded with and who the support systems are for them. So it makes them feel like you really do care very deeply about them. And I know you do, but it's a great way for us to send that message to the student. So item 3, when we find, right now, all of us in higher ed are watching the decline of prospective students. There's a shrinking pool of qualified prospects, and all of us, everyone in the career college business, looks to increase enrollment. So these habits are absolutely important because the market is getting crowded. Overall enrollments have been in decline, and there seems to be more people competing. There's a shrinking pool of qualified applicants because, let's face it, the GED has increased difficulty. There are students out there in the field, or young people out in the field, are unaware of the options that exist for them. And with the economy improving, some people are choosing not to get into the career college arena and maybe take whatever job they can find. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about tactics to develop the prospective pool of students. How do we increase it? What's really interesting, as you can see on the slide, we talk about target opportunity youth. There are, between the ages of 16 and 24 currently, there's 5.6 million opportunity youth out there that have been in, they haven't completed high school, they're out there, they're looking for work. Here's what we know about the opportunity youth out there. 77% believe that getting a good education is really important to them. 85% of them want a good career. And two-thirds of the 5.6 million want a college or tech degree. Now, one of the things I do know about this group is that they struggle with the idea that if they have not completed high school, this has become a problem. And many of them, when I was at Penn Foster, I used to interview quite a few students in the Job Corps programs and in our high school programs, our high school dropout recovery programs. And what we knew is that many of them, high school wasn't working for them, and they decided to get out of the high school environment. And some of those decisions were good because high school wasn't working for them. There was no other place for them to go. They've lived a little bit, and now they've experienced what life is like without a high school diploma, and they want to get back in. So we shouldn't discard those students because they didn't finish high school in the first run-through. So that when we talk about finishing high school, we think, as you all know, there's multiple ways for students to complete their high school. They get the GED, high set, there's lots of exams. But what I've been finding is when I talk to these students, they want to commit to a high school completion because they feel like they started something they never completed. That's one. Two, there's a lot of data out there that suggests that high school diplomas bring in more revenue to them, more income to them than a GED. And many students just say to me they don't want to take the fast way out. They want to do what they need to do. So what's been emerging are many high school completion programs. And the high school completion programs are usually low cost. We're able to deliver them in a hybrid system or in a face-to-face system. And we can even do these on college campuses. They can be, the critical variable for any of you out there trying to bring in these students is make sure you connect up with an accredited high school program that can deliver effectively, possibly on your campus at very low cost, or in a hybrid delivery model, so that if it's on your campus, the great aspect of it is they learn the culture of your organization. If it's in your online platform, they learn the culture of that. So many of those opportunities are great. And the other piece to this, if we really want to attract more prospective students, other than the target opportunity youth, is to add new programs in the fastest growing fields. So we all know that, the health field is exploding. They're looking for lots of people, and waiting to add programs, you could lose an opportunity. I know that in the work that I'm doing right now, digital game-based learning, designing games, game designers, it's an incredibly fast-growing field, and it's important to start to get this going as quickly as we possibly can. So moving along to 4, in this area, find ways to ease the financial burden on students. This is the biggest thing. When I interview students that are not completed high school, they're starting to finish their high school diploma, they want to go to a career tech program, they want to get involved with a career college, they're worried. They're really concerned. 76% of admissions directors report losing applicants due to concerns of debt level. So we have to do all that we absolutely can in this particular area to help our students get less debt and really focus on getting a job that when they get the job, whatever debt they've acquired, they can handle. So the tactics are really to think about looking at tuition and figuring out, how can we make the tuition really be cost effective. Some schools offer final semesters free or discounted. Some are providing financial counseling. I think that's absolutely imperative. Sitting down with students, showing them what they need to know about financial aid, what the payoffs would be. These students really need that. And then the last point to think about is exploring new pricing models. And by that, oftentimes we price courses. Maybe we should start thinking about, we do some of the work I've been doing is we price time. So you get, for 1 year, you get this much, you spend this much money and take as many courses as you can complete. So if you can work at your own pace, this might be a real cost-saving way to think about a different pricing model. Item 5 is to develop extensive support networks for our students. And this goes back to, the idea earlier that a lot of these students sometimes have struggled a bit. And we need to mitigate and encourage them to be diligent and not be fearful of the financial challenges and the academic challenges. So there's lots of things that we could do. These students are often missing the guidance and support of a family that may have already gone to college and they could guide them. They're worried about taking care of their bills and other things. So there's lots of issues that mitigate. So it's really important for us to set up mentorship programs where people that have walked in their own shoes, have already lived through this, that they can be the guides, the sages to these individual students. I think that's absolutely a critical point to take into consideration and help create a network of friends and family. So if you think back a few minutes ago, I'd share with you, when you're taking a student in admissions, find out who their network of support is. And then make a list, put it in a database so that when, if you have a student named Steve and he's doing really well, and Steve's family support person is his grandfather's really been like the person that appreciates him the most, then send Steve's grandparents an email. Say, Steve just did a great job, pat him on the back. Or you could also send him a note and say, Steve's not doing really well right now, he's been struggling, can you reach out and give him some support? So it's really about that, and then also that last point under tactics is to scale content for new students. Oftentimes the beginning of programs for many students is the most boring work. That they're courses that they're set these courses up as courses that you take, at the start, an English course or something. they're in a program where they want to get into doing something. They're in a business program. Give them a business course. They're in a welding program. Let them get their hands on welding. They're in an electrical program. Let them touch that stuff early on and scale the content so they meet with great success early on and they build some real confidence in their programs. So item 6. So as we move to 6, emphasize the importance of data. And data is absolutely critical. In today's world, when I think of those dinosaurs that were sitting on that island and the ark was leaving them behind, if they had good data, they would have known to get on the boat. Career colleges have to deal with immense collection of student data. And we have to be able to have that data and make that data usable. There's increasing competition in the landscape, and administrators need, and as you can see there, we say administrators should turn to hard data to gain a competitive edge. They should also turn to soft data. All right. So what do you need to do in this area? Is take the data-driven approach to recruitment. Don't lose track of all the data that those students give you when they come on board. Take a look at focusing on data to improve retention and outcomes. If you're an online system, where do students fall down the most? How do we intervene at that point in time? What kind of lessons are being developed that our students seem to fail at? Let's look at the students' transcript that when they came in and figure out, is this transcript really successful? Is this kind of a program really successful for that student? And lastly is collect and analyze student testimonials. I mean, if you really want to understand the success of your system, you've really got to get the voice of the student as a critical variable and a critical piece of data in the decisions that you make. They'll tell you what the best course sequence is. They'll tell you where the more difficult parts of units and instructions are and where we need to start to begin to analyze the work that's going on. But clearly, if you can, this is the area where you should make significant investment in data teams that make your data usable for everybody as quickly as possible. 7 is to create student evangelists. I love this one because this is the competitive landscape in this industry is amazing, and making your school stand out is by getting your students to be the evangelists for your program. This is absolutely critical. Highlight student success in your school's marketing program and think about creating a student ambassador program. Student ambassador programs are absolutely, we at Penn Foster and many other places I've worked, getting students to wear the swag and reach out, do video clips, do testimonials. When a student is questioning whether or not they should enroll, have another student call them. Have a student make the call. Have a student say, invite them to the campus. But these programs need to be pretty well structured. So you don't just run around and stick an ambassador symbol on an individual. There are many, many schools out there that have great training programs. You got to screen the right people into these programs. One bad ambassador could do the damage of 10 good ambassadors. So you want to make sure that you have an incredibly powerful and strong ambassador program. These programs these students need to be trained. They need to be recognized. They need to be a real key part of the recruitment process. A small investment here, getting those student ambassadors on social media, getting them to reach out, it's a win-win for your program. So let's get to the 8th piece of the puzzle, the final piece, the piece that actually is that black piece. It makes the puzzle all come together. I wouldn't say that that's exactly the way it is, but this one is, is being diligent on understanding the complex regulatory environment and ensuring compliance, ensuring that your regulatory requirements are in the tightest and neatest package. There's nothing wrong there, because regulations vary from state to state as you move your divisions around. If you have students coming from other states, understand the variances of all of those. Now, what I like to say is that you always err on the side of caution when it comes to regulation. We always want our college, our universities to be on the front pages of the press for really good reasons. The last thing we want is to be on the front page of the press because we had some violation of some regulatory piece of information, some regulation that we violated. If that occurs, it's really difficult to recover. So our thoughts here is err on the side of caution. If a regulation is vague, take it to the most strictest interpretation. Don't think, oh, we can squeeze it through here. Not a good idea. And ensure marketing and admission teams really know and are knowledgeable about the requirements. Many of you know those things. They need to be trained regularly so that they're not violating any of the requirements that are out there. So with that, let me just take you to this slide of key takeaways before I turn it back over to Lauren and we take a look at questions, if there are any questions out there. But, you know, again, there's 3 big domains that these 8 fall under, and some of them fall into more than one. Recruitment is absolutely critical. We have a heavy investment in there, and you can see how these 8 characteristics line up there. Retention, obviously, once the cost of getting them in is the greatest, and keeping them and having them move should be our next most important. And then this issue of job placement. And one thing I would throw out to you all as we think about this right now, the role your alumni can play with job placement. So every graduate that you have that has a job, think about, instead of asking them for a donation, asking them to support you in the alumni that way, ask them, here's what we want from all of our alumni. We want our alumni to embrace our new alumni, our new graduates, and find a way to get them into the job market. Because once you get them into the job market, there's the next recruitment tool. Now you've got two people building, or 3 or 4. And that's the way we really begin to discover how career colleges can be incredibly successful in the environment we're in today. So I'm going to turn it back over to Lauren and see if any of you have raised any questions out there.
Well, thank you so much, Ray. This has been really great and insightful information. Again, as a reminder, if you have any questions you'd like to ask us, make sure you type them in the chat box in the bottom right corner, or you can tweet to us using the hashtag 8habits. But we've gotten a couple of great questions in, so we'll dive into those. While people are taking a moment to write their questions down, I wanted to mention also that we're currently offering the Career School Guide to Increasing Enrollments for our webinar attendees. And this document goes into a lot more detail on some of the enrollment options that we mentioned in today's webinar, and is just an all-around terrific resource to refer to. So to take advantage of this offer, you can contact us using the email address partnersolutions@pennfoster.edu, which is on your screen right now. And we'll also be sharing this out under social using our hashtag 8habits. All right, so I've seen some really good questions come in. So the first question we have for Ray is, of all the habits you've shown, are there 1 or 2 that you would prioritize?
Oh, boy. That's kind of like asking which piece of the puzzle is the right piece. So I'd say there's a lot of different things that depends on. In general, I'd say there are 2 that I would spend a little more time on. The first is job placement, because once you get people into the workforce and they put your diploma on their wall and people start seeing that, that's absolutely helpful. And second, I would say the importance of emphasizing a really powerful program on understanding student anxiety. During the recruitment process, once somebody begins to put pen to paper or keyboard to screen and begins to actually look at attending your school, I think the idea is to make them really understand how much support there is for them. The support for, if they're worried about finances, if they're worried about do they have the skills to make it, I think dealing with student anxiety is important. And if I had to throw a third one in there, just because 1, 2, 3 is always a good thing to do, I'd really say the importance of really managing your data incredibly well and what that data tells you.
Great. Thank you, Ray. So our next question is, you had talked about the high school completion program and high school equivalency exams as great ways to find new enrollments. If these students couldn't earn a high school diploma, why would we want them for our college?
Yeah, that's not an unusual question, and people say, well, we don't want people that didn't complete their high school. Well, let me share a couple of things. One, I was chair of the National Dropout Prevention Network. I'm currently on their board and past president, serving the role as past chair. And I've interviewed, when I was writing my book, It's Not Us Against Them, I interviewed hundreds and hundreds of students, and many of them dropouts. When you look at the school systems in our country right now, sometimes they are not working for students, and students make the decision to leave. When they do that, it casts them as a failure. And I don't see students sometimes as dropouts. I see them as non-completers. They chose not to complete that program, and they're looking for something else. So when I see that, I say, look, I know a lot of people that graduated at the bottom of their class that are running big companies today. It's not about whether they completed their high school program. It's about, have they learned enough now to really begin to jump back into the workforce and say, look, high school wasn't working for me. I didn't like the one class to the next class to the next class. I didn't understand how it fit into my life. No one ever actually in high school ever tells anybody how that all fits together. And some people need to know that. So I really don't think that just because they did not complete high school, I think you need to really focus on what's the profile of success in your school, in the college that you have, in the programs you have. Is it about diligence? Is it about being able to problem solve, or and all of those kinds of skills that we know most employers want? It's to try to figure out, you're not taking people that are failures, you're taking people that want in, and the best thing then to do is to emphasize with them, this is a building experience. So I really support some people out there that I understand the idea, but if you can get them motivated and willing to jump in, I think you're going to find they don't want to make that mistake again, if it was a mistake. And I think you're going to find really incredibly powerful students.
Great answer. So I think we've only got a few minutes left, so I'll just ask one more question. Outside of the 8 habits you mentioned, is there anything you can think of that successful career colleges should be doing?
I think probably the biggest thing is that we have to recognize a couple of things. One, we need to understand in today's world it's about collaboration. It's about reaching out in order to grow. And I really feel like it's, sometimes we focus inside too much. And so it's reaching outside. When I was talking earlier about reaching out to businesses, I'm saying, having businesses be really tough on you about having conversations about, are we doing the right things? Where are we going? I think that's absolutely important. It's important to have those critical conversations. I also think something I learned long ago is that sometimes we stay too insular in how we look at ourselves. And I'd say if you're in a career college that's focused on a particular area, send some of your leadership team to a whole different business and look at how that business is doing. The automotive business is different today than it was before. They had to figure out, look at what other companies are doing. So take a step outside of the college environment, the career college environment, and look at what other companies and other industries are doing to grow their business. And is there some way we can draft off of that knowledge and that thinking that they do? Second is, I really do think that we need to understand that we need to use data and our students' data to really help us make our decisions. Oftentimes, and even in the work I do now, we spend a lot of time listening to faculty, listening to businesses, and we really need to also listen to students. I think I tweeted something out the other day about how bored our children are in our schools today because we submit them to traditional ways of learning, and they've grown up in a very different world. And we need to understand that, sometimes we think this is the right way to learn. Maybe they can offer. How would they have taught something? How, after a lesson is over, having faculty ask students, I just taught you this. Is there a better way for me to deliver this to you? Use the students, use student voice as a powerful way to improve your school. And if you do that, I think that adds incredible value to the success and the growth of your business. So thanks a lot, Lauren. It's been fun chatting here to the screen.
Thank you, Ray. This has been really great. And with that, that's all the time we have for today's webinar. So if you have any questions that we didn't get to, please contact us at the email address that's on your screen. And again, you can reach us on Twitter at #8habits. We'll also be sending you a copy of these slides, so keep an eye out for that email. And as a reminder, just please take a moment to fill out our 4-question survey when you close out of the webinar. On behalf of Ray McNulty and the team here at Penn Foster, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.